I love the fact that so many women are talking about this topic across all different kinds of social media. Women are talking about the unpaid labor or invisible labor and mental load that they are expected to take on simply because we're women. We have a uterus, so we must be there and be there for everybody and disregard the fact that our time, energy, and resources are valuable. So this was posted in the Ask Women Over 30. It was posted a few days ago. She asked the question, has anyone noticed that many men only like women based on how available we are to them? Let's get into this post. She says, lately I've noticed this pattern with men. They seem to only like women when they can have our full attention. Like when a woman becomes a mom, her focus naturally shifts to her kid. Suddenly her husband feels neglected or unloved and maybe even hates her. It's creepy, almost like a switch flips. But she hasn't really changed. She's just trying to manage motherhood and doing the best she can. It seems like many men care deeply about how emotionally available you are to them emotionally, physically, and sexually. When pregnancy and motherhood causes that man to be deprioritized, many can't handle it. We are certainly seeing that in many different situations, posts, videos, and all of that. It's the same with single moms. So many men instantly write them off, not necessarily because they have kids, but because their time and emotional energy are already consumed. She can't center her whole world around him, and for a lot of men, that's a deal breaker. And if it's another man's kid, they view that woman as someone else's property. It's almost like an animalistic dominance thing going on. I absolutely agree with that as well. Even as a married woman, I notice it. The moment I tell a man I'm married, most lose interest completely, not just romantically, but even in being friends. It's like they only saw me as someone valuable if there was a chance that they could have access to me for a relationship or sex. It really makes me think that a lot of these men don't see women as people. They see us through a lens of what we can give them. Is it attention, affection, care, sex, or validation? And once that's off the table, we stop existing to them. It's honestly made me really sad. Has anyone else noticed this? I absolutely have. And it's not just attention, affection, care, sex, or validation. It's more than that. It's our creativity. It's our knowledge, because they try to tap into all of that. It's the reason why they want all of us back into the workplace, because they can siphon our creativity and knowledge and then act like they did it. They are colonizers, even if it's not in a romantic sense. They want to tap women for as much as they can get. And if it's not our bodies, it's our mind, it's our empathy, it's all of that. They want all of it, and they will suck a woman's life force because they don't see our humanity. We're nothing but a utility to many of them, and they are colonizers or vampires, parasites. That's another word that I use for them. They will drain your life force and your creativity because they haven't learned how to manage their own lives. They haven't learned how to create on their own. That's the reason why they come and they attempt to suck a woman dry of her time, energy, and resources. Llama Pajamas says, since I started dating after a long-term relationship, I have noticed that guys want me to entertain them, whether that be giving them an ego boost, acting as their therapist, or stimulating them sexually. Example, asking about my sexual fantasies, even though we barely know each other. While dating has rendered most people disposable, the emotional labor women are tasked with in the dating world is wild. Here's my take, too, says, this has been my experience to a T. It made me stop online dating because the emotional labor was the enemy of peace. Jeez. Here we have a man, Justin, a man under 30. Let's see what he says. He says, that sounds gross, and I'm sorry you've dealt with those types. As a dude newly dating in my late 20s, I've noticed a similar pattern from women I've messaged, but it's more akin to me needing to entertain them with my words. Beyond taking a personal interest in them, I also have to be funny and entertaining, which is a lot when you're still getting to know a person. I really think online dating just doesn't work well 90% of the time. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a man talking in the Ask Women in the Ask Women subreddit. Why is there a man answering this question? Rock Dork says, I am asexual and not interested in men and have minimal to do with them in my everyday life. But even I notice this. You immediately stop existing to them if you're not sexually or emotionally available because they don't see us as a human being with value outside of what you can give them. Amen, Rock Dork. This is what I was saying. Okay, let's see. It's very dehumanizing and objectifying, and they often react to your unavailability with violence and vitriol. There is a lot of grief in realizing how little space women are given to be full human beings. Absolutely, that is very concise in wrapping all of this up, but I'm gonna keep on with some of the comments. Miss Fisher's Murder says, there's an old saying about how women marry men hoping that the man will change, men marry women thinking that the woman won't. I think in general, men have less grasp of how much dynamics change after a kid is introduced into the equation. A lot of my male friends want kids and talk about it, but their concept of having a kid is like having a dog. They list off what they plan to do during paternity leave. Their idea of being a stay-at-home father is to pursue hobbies at leisure with a baby strapped to their backs. And they actively scoff at the idea that they won't be able to prioritize friendship and travel the same way they do now. But also I think this post conflates a couple of different issues. Men only viewing women through the lens of sexual availability is pretty different from someone's willingness to date a single parent, not to mention how much time and emotional energy a single parent might actually have for a romantic partner. Okay, so that's what that person says. But also, I do think that all of this does kind of go together. Regardless, you only have so much time, energy, and resources. And they see a person with less time, energy, and resources as less valuable. That's the reason why they get angry at a pet parent, at a plant parent, at a woman with hobbies or who travels or who has standing brunch dates with her friends. They get mad at all of that because they want to tap into all of that what they perceive as extra time, energy, or resources. Now we have this person, Official Killix. She is a woman between the age of 30 and 40. Now she's honing in on this part right here, but also I think this post conflates a couple of different issues. And then she says this, I feel OP's post comes from a place of bitterness. The fact that this woman is calling this other woman bitter simply because of this post is kind of silly to me, but I laughed at that, and she got downvoted 20 times. And then I wanted to get to this one from Nylam saying a lot of narcissists or those with MPD can hide or mask pretty well until their partner has a baby, and then they seem to flip into another person overnight because they're not the center of attention. But in general, without being diagnosed MPD, is a pretty rampant narcissistic trait that men or that people have now. The patriarchy taught generations of men, on the whole, that women would be falling over themselves just to be with a man, that they deserve or are owed a woman just simply for existing. Generations of men that saw us as nothing but that. Not to mention being brainwashed into thinking we're baby machines and domestic slaves who should have less rights. Lots of men still hold those views, but even growing up around those thoughts will inevitably, unconsciously influence behavior. Add operating under capitalism, especially with the scarcity mindset, and then all the emotional influence feeling rejected or misled has on men when they're not just getting the wife they were owed or promised easily. And people start to view each other as objects that might benefit them, that might be a recipe for dehumanization. This comment is the perfect comment to end on because she wraps it up really well. She puts a little bow on it. These men do believe showing up with a peen and a job means that they are supposed to get this wife, this family, this woman this wife appliance that's going to do all of these things. She's going to cook, she's going to clean, she's going to bust it wide open. She's going to give them some kids and they're going to take some pictures and have family holidays and vacations and all of that. And all they have to do is show up with a peen and a job, and bam, they get their wife appliance. And now women are saying absolutely not. Let me know what you think about all of this. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. This is an Am I the A-hole post from a few days ago. This talks about boundaries, entitlement, and how women are used for their labor, even by family. So she asked the question, am I the a-hole for not transferring a website after getting fired from the family business? Based on the title alone, absolutely not. You're not the a-hole because you got fired, so they need to figure it out themselves. Anyways, let's look at the post though. She says the history is involved and goes back 13 years, so I'll add some context to try to make the situation as clear as possible. I met my adopted parents when I was 19 years old, and they really took me in and helped raise me as a young adult. So when they decided to start a company 8 years ago, I helped them build it from the ground up, handling all of the technicalities and business side of things like licensing, insurance, marketing, etc. I also built a very extensive website for the company on my own time, as by this point I'd started my own small-scale freelance marketing company as well. In the 8 years that followed, the business grew a lot. I got married and had 2 children, so backed away from freelance work and began working from home solely for the family business. All customer correspondence via phone and email, scheduling appointments and projects, maintaining licenses and insurance, managing on-site crews in progress, taking payments, receipts, invoicing, and reviewing all project bids for accuracy as they wanted to keep things old school. They paid me for 3 days a week, but the workload was full-time due to the growth in the business to where I was often working until 3, sometimes 5 a.m., including on my days off, and was always on call, answering phone calls, texts, all days and hours. My husband had joined the company six years ago and eventually was working over 12-hour days, 6 days a week as a foreman and project estimator, which often he had to do tasks for even while he was home and was also on call. He would be scheduled for appointments 2 to 3 days a week, sometimes driving 300 miles in one day, and the other days would lead as a foreman on projects, usually at least 50 miles away. All business expenses were covered individually, meaning only personal vehicles and cell phones were used. Gas, business insurance, tools, etc. came out of pocket for us. Oh my goodness, no, including all office supplies, marketing subscriptions on my end. On top of that, if any mistake was made on site, resolving it would be on personal time as well as taken out of our check, even if the mistake was made by a crew member, as the foreman is still considered responsible. Fast forward to 6 months ago, my adopted parents asked me to come in for a meeting, which ended up being to discuss my husband's work performance. Keep in mind, I was his direct manager and took that role very seriously and am the only one that's been legitimately business-minded in all of this. While he did have some issues in the beginning, he got to a point where he was great at his job, but severely overworked. At some time, they pointed out that my husband would never find another job that would keep him around and have him making what he does, at which point I mentioned that they didn't pay as well as they thought they did. They were offended beyond belief that I would even suggest that and let me know that Friday would be my last day and good luck finding anyone else who would pay you what we do to stay home with your children. Subsequently, my husband would also be done working there after 30 days. I did try to get them to extend the time a week or more to be able to train the people replacing me well enough, but they were adamant that I didn't actually do all that much and none of it was hard. I spent the rest of the week putting together informational data sheets to make the transition as seamless as possible and always helped anytime they needed something in the following weeks, even though they and the whole family have now cut us off entirely outside of business questions. The website was something I'd always maintained on my own time and dime as a way to sew into my adopted parents and the company, and it was agreed that I'd continue maintaining it even though I wasn't working there anymore. They've now decided to have their oldest son take over the marketing and the website, so asked me to transfer it over to him. The problem is, this website is so complex and really just a beautiful representation of my abilities, and the only one on my portfolio like it. After getting let go, I turned my focus back to my freelance work, and if I transferred this site from my LLC at this point, it would be a massive hit to my own business. I explained to the owner that I can leave the website up for their son to copy and paste everything over, but he would just need to rebuild it on his end as I can't duplicate it. I will also transfer the domain, which itself is valued at more than $1,000, just to make the transition easier for them. They are incredibly upset with the idea, though, because the son doesn't know how to do all of that, which I understand, and did offer to come teach them or him how to do everything. But of course, they don't want to do that because they operate the business out of their home, and I'm no longer welcome there. I'm not sure how else I could possibly handle this without sacrificing my own freelance efforts and having to start from scratch. I don't want to make things difficult for them, and I do feel I'm being more than fair by the options I've given as it is, especially considering the way I've been treated throughout the whole ordeal. But I'm still questioning if maybe I just need to just transfer it over and accept the loss. So to my Reddit judges, am I the a-hole for not just having gone that route in the first place? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You did this on your own time. You used your own money. You used your own energy and expertise. And then they let you go simply because you mentioned that they weren't paying that well. Absolutely not. They are not owed anything like that. You did more than enough, and they were this couple, they were taking on more expenses and more things than they had to take on because these people weren't paying them. And this is one of the things that happens. Like if there's a family business and they get divorced, if the woman was doing all of the back-ended things, then the company a lot of times will fold because somebody else with the brains of the matter is gone. This company is not going to be able to do all of the foundational things that a lot of the time women's invisible labor, it's invisible and underappreciated and unappreciated. These people did not appreciate all the things that she was doing and even still considered doing, even though they were like, nope, you're not welcome here. They're going to see, though. They will see how much she was doing, even though they said to her, you weren't doing that much. It's probably going to cost them like the amount of like 3 full-time employees to duplicate what she did, and she was only being paid for 3 days a week. It's going to cost them more money for being some a-holes. Anyway, absolutely not the a-hole. They do not deserve any more consideration. That is my thinking on this. She gives us an update. She says, first of all, thank you, Redditors, for your overwhelming response. I really didn't expect so many comments and appreciate you for all the insight and advice you've given. All of this has just lived in my head for so long that it's really helped to have outside perspective solidify my position moving forward. I will still transfer the domain freely and leave the site up for the time that I agreed to for them to rebuild on their own, but otherwise will not be helping with the transition any further. Both the professional and personal relationship is severed indefinitely, which, since there seems to be the confusion on that end, I like to clarify. It has been a painful thing to walk through, but although I did initially, I am not hoping for any reconciliation in the future, only healing. Also, to clarify, I did not drag my husband into any of this. We met after he had already joined the company. Every decision along the way has been made together, and we are very much in love. So for those feeling that he should have left me over this, what? All I can say is that I hope you find someone that will walk with you in love and strength through your own dark times the way we do for each other. And yes, I will absolutely be seeking therapy in the future. Thank you all again. The fact that someone said that the husband should leave, like, why? Like, I can't even imagine what kind of comment would come up that would lead to that. But yes, I just wanted to do this because, like I said, family dynamics can be challenging. Having boundaries with family dynamics and your unpaid labor and all of that. They expect so much. And it's hard to say no. And it's hard to be like, I am owed more than that. And they're like, how dare you? So you all join the conversation. I'm not doing any of the comments because she gives the edit, which kind of summarizes what people are talking about. So let me know what you think. Like, comment, and share. Some of the advice in these Reddit posts are like, get counseling, get therapy. But what if your therapist is a pick me and an a-hole or something like that? What happens then? What advice do you give to somebody that has a therapist that is an a-hole or a pick me? All right, let's check this one out in the marriage subreddit. She says, my therapist told me I should have played dumb about my husband's emotional cheating and that I overreacted by leaving. What? Okay, if I had some pearls, I would be clutching them. Her therapist said that she should have played dumb. Just let your husband emotionally cheat. Just let it, like, what? Why would you leave over that? Okay, let's look at the post because at this particular point, obviously, this therapist needs to be fired. But let's just check. She says, I talked to a family therapist recently about my marriage. I told her that I found out my husband was cheating, not physically, but emotionally. I tried to forgive him, but I just couldn't move past it. Eventually, I made the decision to separate, and now I'm living in a different house. Her response honestly shocked me. She told me I was being too rigid and emotional, and that I should have been more flexible and adaptable. Then she said something that completely floored me. All men talk to other women. It's normal and healthy. I asked her what she meant by talk, and she said like chatting on Snapchat or other apps and sharing pictures, flirting, that kind of communication. Then she added, a woman should accept that her husband will cheat about 20% of the time. No man is ever 100% faithful unless he's socially awkward or a failure in some way. Is this a Christian therapist? Because what the actual F is this? When I told her I moved out and separated, she looked at me like I was being dramatic, like it wasn't a big deal. She said I should have just played dumb and pretended not to know. She even gave me an example. You know, like when a guy tells you you're pretty and you exchange Snapchats. I told her I don't do that. She replied, well, what about your friends? I said, even my friends wouldn't do that if they're in a relationship. I've actually met several therapists with PhDs and great credentials who share this same mindset. One even told me that a wife should treat her husband like a mother treats a child who comes home dirty, meaning it's her job to clean him up after his emotional affairs. Y'all, my face is so chopped and screwed because what is this? I left that session feeling speechless. Are there really therapists normalizing infidelity like this? Am I crazy for thinking it's not okay to play dumb when someone breaks your trust? And just to let y'all know, I don't always read through all of these posts as I'm doing them. I'll read the title and maybe a couple of sentences. I'll skim through it, but I don't read this all the way through. And this has me floored because okay, I've never been to therapy like that, but this does not seem ethical. Like, what kind of playbook is this person reading from? Where does she get her credentials? And why would she say this kind of thing? Therapy's supposed to help you through things, not get you to stick and stay through things that are harming your mental health. Sticking and staying with somebody who is an emotional cheater will hurt your mental health. And absolutely. Okay, all I can say is a journal, talking to a rock. Going for a run would have helped better than this pick-me therapist. That's like talking to my Stanley Cup would have probably given her better advice than this therapist. Because no, absolutely not therapist, and you're fired. No reply at all says, leave and report the therapist. Some are more messed up than their patients. Yeah, that's where I am. A stay-at-home dad says, you need to leave your therapist. Post Civil says, and report her to the licensing board. QDB says, yes, seriously, that kind of advice crosses a line. Reporting her sounds completely justified. And then Web of Horror says, this is highly unethical behavior. As a future therapist, there are ethics we must abide by, and this goes way against those ethics. This therapist 100% should be reported. I'm going to end it there because it seemed like most of the comments were just like, yeah, no, that's terrible, and report the therapist. I just wanted to bring it up that, yes, it is a great thing. Some people do need therapy. You need to talk to somebody. Sometimes you just need a journal. Sometimes you just have to figure out what's best for you. But not all people will have your best interest in mind, especially it depends on their background. Some people do still have so much religious programming that they think a woman is just supposed to stay there and be the punching bag or doormat for a husband. And yeah, we're moving past that. We're moving past the doormat stage, and maybe those therapists need the upgraded information. So I'm going to end it there. Let me know what you think about this one. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. We have another post with family dynamics and boundaries and not being a pushover or doormat. So this woman asked the question, am I the a-hole for leaving my children's step-siblings in the care of their babysitter when my ex and his wife were in an accident? So step-siblings. So it has these kids have no relation to their kids or to this woman, the OP. So the OP, she's 32, her ex-husband is 34 years old. So they're still relatively young. And look, they have an 11-year-old and a 10-year-old. So she's been with him or was with him in her early 20s. She's now obviously moved on. Let's jump into the post. All right, so she says, I have 2 children with my ex-husband. We divorced 7 years ago and have not been able to remain on good terms. He remarried 3.5 years ago, and the bad blood between us grew worse at that point. She was never happy about my presence at school functions for the kids, and she'd always make a point of sitting between me and my ex and complaining that the kids would hug me first. But that wasn't the worst of it. At one of those school functions, she accused me of pinching her daughter. Luckily, others saw what happened, and I knew I hadn't. But this woman went ballistic accusing me. Why? I stopped her 4-year-old at the time from falling over. After that, I made sure I sat on the other side of any room as them, and I swore I would have nothing to do with this woman's children. She has 2. The lucky thing for me is that my kids aren't close to them and don't ever ask to invite them over or include them in birthday parties that I throw for them. This makes it easier to keep my distance so no more accusations come my way. And this woman still brings up the pinching accusation and how she should have called the cops and have me thrown in jail. A few weeks ago, my ex and his wife were in a car crash. It was his custody week. We split the kids 50-50. That sentence is just funny to me. We split the kids. Okay. His babysitter called me after they didn't come back home and told me she had no idea what to do, and I was one of the emergency contact numbers given. I tried calling him and he didn't answer, and then I got a call from his mom who told me about the accident and the fact that they would be in the hospital for a while. I told her the babysitter had called me and they might want to send someone for the younger kids. After that, I went and picked up my kids. The babysitter wanted me to take or stay with all 4. My kids wanted to come home and didn't want their step-siblings there. I told the babysitter the other kids weren't mine and gave her my ex's mom's number so she could call since the ex gave her mine and a number that wasn't working as the emergency contacts. The kids and I stopped by the hospital the next morning, and my ex was pissed that I left his stepkids with the babysitter and didn't do more for them. I refused to engage with him on that in front of our kids. But his anger intensified when, from the sounds of it, nobody in his or her family would take care of them. He wanted me to do it, but I said no, and I told him I was nothing to his stepkids, nor would I ever be anything to them, and I was not risking his accusation-happy wife trying to destroy me with her lies. My ex is still pissed at me, and he has called me every name under the sun since the accident. His wife was more hurt seriously than him, and she's not even close to fully recovered, while he mostly is. I think that's fueling this more, but his anger towards me has led me to document all interactions we have now because he's so volatile with me. He told me I should be ashamed for taking our issues out on his stepkids. I feel like I did the right thing because those kids are not my concern, even under the circumstances. My concern is more about any accusation she could throw my way and how that could affect me being a mom to my kids. But I can see where that might be heartless given what the circumstances were at the time. Am I the a-hole? And to that, I still say no. I said no based on the title, and I still say no now. Those kids have a family, and her ex-husband should be taking care of them. But it sounds like towards the end, He's just looking to pawn those kids off because his current wife is not able to take care of her kids. And that is very typical, but where's the rest of the family? There are no uncles or aunties, there's no granddaddies, there's no grandmommies. Where are the rest of the kids' family? And why would this ex-husband think his ex-wife is going to swoop in, especially after they have had bad blood in the past? Some of these people are delusional and entitled, but this is the reason why we have these conversations, so that you can know and understand that you as the woman, simply because you have a uterus, you are not under any obligation to take on additional unpaid labor. Let's look at a few of these comments. Affectionate Lock says, I think the main issue for me is in two families, not a single person helped out. That says a lot about how people feel about the ex and his wife. Mermaid Pain says, yep, ex-hubby should be asking himself why nobody stepped up from his family and friends or his wife's. He won't, of course. Misty Mountain says, it always amazes me in these situations, especially because I have experienced it myself, how the ex wants to keep everything difficult and volatile and constantly beat down your parenting skills, but yet they are perfectly fine when they need you to babysit kids that are not yours. One summer, 2 years after we had been divorced, my ex lived 4 hours away, and if he got belligerent on the phone, I would simply hang up on him because I was not listening to that anymore. 4 hours later, he would be pounding on my door, demanding to finish the conversation and reminding me that I was never allowed to hang up on him. He would even try to call the police. He would violate restraining orders, and they would just tell him to stop being a jerk and not really hold him accountable for anything. I was losing my mind. So I signed over custody to him. I called his lawyer directly when we were signing the papers. He was on his knees begging me not to do this. And I looked him straight in the eye and said, but I'm such a horrible mother. I shouldn't have custody of these children, nor should I be anywhere near them. And his lawyer was freaking out a little bit. He was freaking out a lot. And it was the most difficult thing I ever did in my life. But deep down, I knew he couldn't handle it. And I also knew that without the kids, he had nothing to technically hold over me. And he could totally get in trouble for violating the restraining order then. In the past, the kids were always the excuse, and I needed a break. He had been threatening me and tormenting me for so long, I couldn't take it anymore. It barely lasted the summer. Right before school was ready to start, him and the kids moved back, and we went back to our original custody arrangement, where I had the kids most of the time, and he had them on the weekends, which really never was every weekend, and he did chill out a little bit for a little while. I know people were in the comments and they were digging into her for signing over custody of her children. They were giving it to her. And I do understand why they do that, because for some people, the woman is the default parent. I get that. But these daddies, they need to take on their kids, and they need to take them on full time. These daddies need to see firsthand how much time, energy, and resources it takes to actually raise children. And this dad did. And I wanted to speak on that because I thought that was an interesting aside in this particular post. So go ahead and weigh in and let me know what you think of this one.
She's called 20 churches to tell them she has a hungry infant that hasn't eaten in 48 hours, and they're telling her to fuck off. 'Tis the season. Gotta love that Christmas spirit in people.
26 churches, and 23 of them turned her down. This is what happened to Nicolene. She called 26 churches for help. She pretended to be a desperate mother without baby formula, even playing the sound of a baby crying in the background, begging for help. Some churches gave excuses, some hung up, and others coldly responded, "We don't do that here." But she didn't give up. She made another call, but this time not to a church, to a Muslim mosque. The response was completely different. "Where are you? What kind of formula do you need? Come here, we'll help you." The churches who preach love thy neighbor failed to offer any help in a time of need, while the often misunderstood Muslim community showed what real faith looks like through action. After this experiment, some supported Nicole, believing she exposed the hypocrisy of the religious system. Others criticized her for stirring unnecessary controversy. But no matter where you stand, we all have to ask ourselves, if even those who claim to preach love can't practice it, then where can we find real love?